Pamela and Daniel, thank you so much for joining us for this time. We're so excited to have a brief interview with you and hear some of your thoughts and passions and challenges behind the journey of Rabboni. And Iris, it's great to have you with us as well.
Great to be here.
So Pamela, my first question is for you. Would you please tell us about what Rabboni does? And then this could be for both of you to share, how did you and Henry name the company?
Okay, I'll start with the name. Remember that story in the Bible when Mary went to the tomb to look for Jesus, and Jesus was not there. And then while she was walking away, the gardener showed up and she didn't recognize him. I mean, it wasn't the gardener, it was Jesus, but she thought it was a gardener. And when he called her by name, she referred to him as Rabboni, which means teacher. So as Rabboni, we learned so many things interacting with other players in our space of business. And we just thought we need to pass on what we are learning. We're being taught, and then we are passing it on. Like Paul told Timothy that the things I have told you, pass them also to faithful men. So it could be something to do with financial literacy. It could be post-harvest handling. It could be how better to package your products, or all that stuff. So whatever we are learning, we want to pass it on to other people who we believe their lives will change along the way as we do business, so that it's not just, a profit-making business, but people are learning and their lives are changing along the way. So hence the name teacher, Rabboni, that's how the name came to be. So what we do is really related to that. We work directly with farmers. We're an agro-processing company. We buy directly from farmers so that we can have that opportunity to interact with them and also give them an opportunity to have access to credible markets. Because our experience in Uganda is that the farmers, because they are the lowest on the food chain, they do the hardest work and get the least out of it. As if that is not bad enough, there's so many let's call them exploitators or exploiters, people along the way like middlemen who are always exploiting them because they don't have a strong bargaining point. They don't have storage, they don't have markets, so they're desperate to sell, and there are people who are desperate to buy. So it's a bad combination. But as Rabboni, we feel like if we can buy directly from them, then we can give them the right price for their commodities and just make their livelihood profitable, not just being exploited by middlemen. So that's what Rabboni does. We're an agro-processing company. We do what everyone does. We buy produce, clean it up, put it on the market. But our aim is to buy directly from the farmers so that they're able to benefit from the whole farming business.
That's fantastic. So Pamela, back in 2018, you joined the Sinapis Entrepreneur Academy. And I'm just curious, what made you sign up?
Honestly, anyway, the truth is, I attended a breakfast, business breakfast hosted by Worship Harvest Ministries. And then there were these guys from Sinapis. I don't even remember who they were, but there were some two guys. And they came and they talked about human resource. I was so impressed. I had never heard what they were talking about. I honestly had never heard it. And I was like, wow, this is great stuff. And they're like, we'll soon start an academy in Uganda, blah, blah, blah. So as soon as they set up and the news went around the church, I was one of the very first guys to sign up because I wanted to learn what they were sharing about. So that's what motivated me to sign up. Yes.
So you went through that 16-week program, and I'm curious, what was your experience like? And specifically, and maybe human resource was the most important technical aspect, but were there other aspects of learning to manage the business more effectively that really benefited you?
Yes, you're right. I went there because of HR. I'm very passionate about people. So I like systems or organizations that focus on people management. So that's what took me there. However, I learned so much more than that. I really, really did. Of course, spiritually, I keep saying this. I learned about moral courage. I say that because, wow, it's one of the things that just blew me away. But then also the other thing, I began to understand that business is more than just doing what we love the way we want, you know. I just learned that we have to be accountable, you know. And that's when we actually started realizing that we need to formalize our systems. Like we need to be a formal company, put systems in place. We don't just do things the way we want and all that stuff. So that for us began the journey of putting systems in place, beginning to formalize, beginning to get structured, you know, because that's one of the things that Sinapis brought up very clearly. So basically it was the HR, it was the Christian perspective and the structures and systems.
And the moral courage.
Yes, moral courage is, yeah, the Christian thing. I talk about it so much, it's about to be my middle name, but yes, that.
Well, you know, and as you guys grew, like most SMEs, you know, you began to have additional needs, additional capital needs, and you began to, you know, have opportunities to scale, and yet you couldn't do that without additional capital. Daniel, could you share a little bit about what those opportunities to scale were for Rabboni and why it was difficult for you to access capital?
Thank you, Iris. The value chain that we are engaged in is the maize value chain, and it's one of the most commonly grown crops here by smallholder farmers. This is a crop that's grown by over 2 million farming households across the entire country. And each household has an average of 5 people. So if you get 2 million by 5, then you get 10 million people who are depending on this value chain as one of the key crop that's actually grown. Now, Uganda produces 5 million metric tons of maize every year, but only just under 1 million metric tons actually traded formally. The rest is either lost through the post-harvest handling or go through informal channels and just gets lost along the way. So somehow, the person who bears the biggest brunt in terms of getting this crop out of the garden is the farmer. And yet they are the biggest losers as well. Why? Like Pamela mentioned, it's a crop that's commonly grown almost by default by most farmers, although the productivity are still very low. So once the farmers grow, it becomes extremely very difficult for them to offload this produce out onto a market. So you find they typically grow, they lose it, they go back, they grow, they lose it, they go back, they grow, they earn a little, and so much of that. So much of that product is actually not taken into the formal trading structures, principally because of issues to do with the ability to buy from the farmers when they actually bring the produce onto market, but also the ability to process large volumes in a very short period of time. Maize needs to be processed very, very quickly. So which means you must have machinery that can process the product extremely very, very quickly in a very short period of time, so that you do not face the problems of aflatoxin and insect infestation, which typically kill the grain. So when the farmers harvest, they need to have an outlet that takes that maize off them very, very quickly. And then they don't have the capacity to process that maize. The machinery is extremely very expensive. The storage facility is extremely very expensive to set up, at least in large capacities. So they need somebody who can come and offload this grain off them and then can be able to handle it and give it a longer shelf life through the processing angle. So with the 5 million metric tons that were being produced, just under 1 million was actually traded. So you are having almost 4 million metric tons that cannot be traced by a single finger somehow, somewhere. So we saw this as an opportunity and say, how can we make a contribution? We are not yet even on 0.5% of the volume that's produced in the country. Neither is any one of the processors in the country having more than 3% capacity to handle the volume. But the product is actually there and it's grown. And we are having 2 seasons. People grow it 2 times a year. Uganda here, we have 2 seasons, so they can grow it between the harvest, the first period is February to March, mid-April. And then the second harvesting season is between July and September. So you have people who are growing this crop twice a year, but particularly having the trouble to actually get this product across the market. So we saw that as an opportunity. The volumes are extremely immense, and there's a huge opportunity to actually offload it from them and process it and send to the market. So that's the opportunity that we saw, and it's extremely very scalable for us.
And so for you guys, what was the bottleneck that you hit in your company where you couldn't get any more volume? And what was the capital need that you needed to get there?
The bottlenecks are actually threefold. One, when you go to deal with farmers, they've spent 5 to 6 months with this crop in the garden. They need money, so they don't have money. So the moment comes, they want to see money immediately. As soon as he gets the product out, he wants to touch the money. So you must have money to buy it from them. If you don't buy it from them, however good you are, however established you are, if you don't have money to get the grain off them, then it becomes very difficult for them to deal with you. They'll go to the cheapest person as long as he throws a few shillings in their face. So, but do they actually benefit from that? Most of the answer, like Pamela was mentioning, they are typically making losses because they are opportunists along the way who say that I have some money, you either take it or leave it. So for us, it was a bottleneck to actually have that volume of money that enables us to actually get the grain. The second one, our processing capacity and storage capacity were extremely very, very low. We have the storage capacity that can handle at any one given time 1,000 metric tons. 1,000 metric tons is a minuscule volume compared to the volume actually that's producing 5 million metric tons. And yet you have a very short buying window of maximum 4 weeks, beyond which the grain basically migrates to other handlers who are the large volume handlers. Now, those people, once it migrates from the farmers and goes to them, then they start mentioning the price, whatever they have. No matter how you look, no matter how you talk, they'll tell you a price that's extremely very, very costly for you, and typically you just move away from them. So that was also a bottleneck for us. Then the third one was our processing capacity. We have a machine that processes 20 metric tons in a whole day. You can only do so much with 20 metric tons. We are the second tier of the processors here. We have 3 tires. They are the high tires who produce from 50 to 300 metric tons in a day. Then those below 50 metric tons to 20 metric tons where we fall. And then there are those who are also mostly in the villages, in the rural areas, and using very, very low technology and extremely very inefficient machines that produce less than 20 metric tons in a day. So we were in that second tier, and we wanted bigger aspirations in terms of reaching the grain that we can be able to handle, but also we needed to have the tools that enable us to handle this grain so that does not slip into that destructive state of having aflatoxins and live insect infestation.
So why was it difficult for you to get that capital for that machinery, for that working capital?
Well, the biggest issue was we didn't have a large track record to show around. The financing system in Uganda here is extremely very skewed. The banks are typically very conservative. It's difficult for them to see an opportunity and probably grab it. So they prefer giving money probably to government. So they lend to government through the treasury bills and bonds. Government is perennially borrowing from the banks itself to finance some of its recurrent expenditures. So that starves the banking system of money for private business people who want to actually to invest. So they leave a very small amount of money for the private sector to actually borrow. Now, that small money that remains is they prefer people who are guaranteed a salary, as either they are working for the government as a civil servants, and therefore they have security of tenure. Probably they are going to retire at 65 years. So they prefer giving them salary loans, and those monies are normally very little. Why? They are secure borrowers in their eyes. And then they also prefer lending to other bigger companies that have already built a big track record, and they have a large asset base that they can probably put on the table. Now, companies like ours, which are basically coming from the lowest strands of the processing chain, become extremely unattractive for these businesses. They tend to look at you as not necessary in their eyes. They have enough demand for the little money that remains after government has actually borrowed. So once the government borrows, it crowds out the private sector, and definitely the little money that remains is given to what they call the safe bet borrowers. The people who have salaries and give them salary loans, buying a car here, buying a house here, things like that. Nothing really productive. And then the people want to do productive work are starved of money. So that's the challenge that we're having.
Yeah, and that's why Talanton, comes into what we call the missing middle for companies like you who find it so difficult to find that funding, despite the fact that you are the engine for job creation and to help the livelihood of these farmers. So yeah, that's it's a gap that Sinapis and Talanton are trying to fill. So Talanton has given Rabboni an investment for that additional machinery, the warehouse for additional capacity. Tell me, where do you see yourself? Where do you see Rabboni in 3 to 5 years with the additional capacity that that we're investing in now?
Well, we are working on a lot of things. We are going through a very, very aggressive reorganization as a business, both internally, but also in terms of our reach and operations. Internally, we, like Pamela has mentioned, where she picked that idea of actually making sure that business is formalized. We have instituted extremely very, very rigorous systems. We've automated our systems, at least the accounting systems, to build a very clear audit trail of all our transactions that we handle. We want to be accountable to our employees. We want to be accountable to our suppliers. We want to be accountable to our financials, every single person. And that comes from having very clear systems, especially in the finance. But also in terms of staffing, we've upgraded the quality of the top management staff that we have. And we brought in a very high-end chief finance officer who is helping us now lead the finance team and making sure that all the operations of the business are up to world standards. We don't want to play the simple mediocrity game anymore. And we want to be able to upgrade the way we operate the business in terms of the operations. And that calls for high quality caliber staff that are able to run the critical elements of the business. We've also recruited recently a very good quality systems analyst who is going to work in food. And you need to be able to maintain quality at every single stage of the way. So we brought in that person who is now already working on good manufacturing practices, and we want to benchmark our operations at world standards. And we are going to be ISO certified in the next 3 to 5 years. By the end of this year, we will have UNBS certification. UNBS is the Uganda National Bureau of Standards, which we don't have as of now, but we're already working on that and making sure that happens. But also we are working in terms of our operations and how do we optimize operations. The staff reorganization that is happening is going to be based on key performance indicators. That was not something that we were already doing as a business until Talanton came in and gave us high-end people who were able to build the technical capacity and the systems that are needed for us to actually do that kind of reorganization. Externally, in terms of operations, previous years we've been handling just under 3,000 metric tons, 3,500 metric tons annually. We are ballooning that starting this year, and because we are now having the facilities that are needed to enable us to handle the volume. We're already putting up a large warehouse that's going to have 3,000 metric ton capacity, that alone, and we are going to add another one, and we are going to have a processing facility that handles at least 100 metric tons per day. So we are seeing that the volume of transactions that we are having, both in our terms of operation, are going to be extremely very high. Now that gives us an opportunity also to roll back the demand that we are having from the farmers, and we can be able to take in a lot more volume than we are currently handling. And that means also we are having more farmers coming on board who are having a guaranteed market. So you are having on the side of production here and marketing extremely going big in terms of operations, and also on the side of farmers also going big. So in the next 5 years, we are going to move from just under 3,500 farmers that we are handling to almost 6,500 farmers that are supplying us directly. That's going to be more than double in the next 3 years. But also in terms of production here, we are going to move from the 3,500 to 3,500 metric tons that we are handling. By end of 2025, we should be handling at least 7,500 metric tons per season that we should be handling. So that is going to be driving us as a company to really blow up the volumes that we are handling, but also in tandem, bring on board as many as possible smallholder farmers into our supply chain system.
So Daniel, that's an amazing vision. You're speaking a lot about systems and sophisticated business concepts. And I'd love for either one of you or both to connect the dots between the smallholder farmers that you've been talking about and the growth that you want to see and the need for companies like Rabboni to be managed with excellence and to be profitable and to have the kind of reach that can make a real impact in their lives. So can you help those that are listening to this understand why it's so important that you go on that journey and what a difference that makes for a family that's living on 1 or 2 acres in rural Uganda, trying to provide for their family and trying to make their way in this world?
You want to go?
Let me give it a shot. So if Rabboni is going to attain the levels of growth that we are looking at, and we're going to increase the volumes that we are taking in, and we're going to increase the number of farmers, what that means is that on the ground, the number of families that are going to be impacted is going to be so much greater than we are doing now, because what Daniel explained earlier about the farmers producing, then making a loss, then doing it again, they kind of stay on the same level, on the same piece of land. Sometimes it even reduces with each season, because if they made a loss this time, they're like, no, next time they probably, sell off half the land because they have to survive. So that the land is reducing, the productivity is reducing and all that. But if they're guaranteed a market, then one, there's a possibility of them even increasing their production because they are now making some real money out of what they're getting. And also there is the incentive to grow more. So they're willing to put in more, to invest more so they can produce more. So you're having farmers that were having just a little piece of land now aspiring to have an even bigger piece of land so they can grow even more. So there's that growth that happens at that level because of a market that is guaranteed. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. We're thinking if we can do this, guarantee this, then the farmers will be able to grow at that level. And then also the other reason why it's very important that Rabboni grows is if you have so many farmers reducing production over time, you'll find that the food industry as a whole is going to suffer. Eventually, we have some farmers who have actually abandoned farming and moved to town to ride motorcycles or whatever, do something else in town. So if you're having that continual chipping off the food basket suppliers, then you're having a reduction in the food basket. It may not happen in a year or two, but eventually you would see the effect. So what Rabboni is doing is literally guaranteeing production of food for Ugandans and for this nation by just giving that confidence that will buy your commodity and at a good price. Yeah.
I can add in as well. There is also a very almost ignored angle about the productivity that the farmers actually have. It's not enough for you to grow your 1 acre. And this is the knowledge that we've been imparting in our own way. And we are telling them, look, if you invest in improved inputs, you are going to double. Without doing anything else, you're going to double the volume that you actually get. Then they say, it's not possible. You show us. So we pilot with a few farmers. We don't have enough resources to do it on a large scale. But we pilot with our little resources with a few farmers. Right now, we have over 650 farmers that we help to get improved seed. And now that immediately doubles their production from the same acre without doing anything else. And they move away from using recycled seed, which they keep season after season, and it loses its genetic composition to give you optimum output. And then they easily get few bags from the acre that they've grown. Now, if they use improved inputs, that immediately doubles. So the farmer moves from 500 kilograms per acre to 1,100 to 1,200 kilograms per acre. The same period. Now, if you have the same production, it means you've already doubled your income by just investing in 10 kilograms per acre. Now, 10 kilograms is just 100,000 shillings, Uganda shillings. 100,000 shillings is like how much in dollars?
$30.
It's like $30 that the person is investing. So $30 to $35 that they invest, and it enables them to double the income that they get by just investing $35.
That's amazing. Real quick follow-up question for me that I think we could probably into it, but what happens for one of these families when their income doubles because of those inputs in a given period of time?
It's amazing. It's amazing what happens. But I'll share with you an experience, some of the farmers that we've actually engaged with. People are, it's amazing if you move into some of these houses, how people actually live. And they are totally comfortable in their own way of living. And you find somebody probably has lived on a small mattress for the past probably 30 years, no investments whatsoever, until I don't have money. Every time I grow, money is finished. But once they start having disposable income and you show them some pictures of better living, then they start having that aspiration that I can actually improve how I live, how I sleep, how my child sleeps, and also the children, once they pick this, they start getting it inside their minds that actually life can be much better than we've already been used to. And you see those transformations happening. Things to do with investment in education. Here we have free education for primary education and secondary education. And if the government hasn't paid, then the parents will sit back and say, well, the government hasn't paid, therefore my child will not go to school. So they don't bother about that kind of thing. We are trying to change the narrative and say that that's one of the best investments you're going to make in your child, so that they don't come back and be beggars to you when you're in your old age and they want to sell your land. So you've got to take the difficult choices right now and say, I'm going to invest in education. If I earn money from my garden and I have saved some money, I can put money here into your education. That enables you to become a better citizen and make a better contribution to this nation. So those kind of aspirations dig deep inside their emotions, and they start seeing that there is life that can actually be lived. We can actually do better. We can actually move to a better level of living. And it's not something that we just talk about, something that we've piloted and we've shaken them out of their comfort zones. And people are making those kinds of movements to better living. And for us, it gives us internal satisfaction that the people that we deal with are also happy internally. And they can actually also, talk about the way they are living with their heads high in their communities.
One of the passions that both Sinapis and Talanton have is to serve the unbelievable potential and vision of catalytic entrepreneurs like you. So we're really grateful for that opportunity. And I want to ask a question about kingdom business. You've called Rabboni a kingdom business and a calling. So what does that practically mean to you?
Wow.
Our chief is here.
Yeah, one of the things that we are beginning to clutch onto that is very core to us is just the realization that, we are stewards in this business. Like, God has given us an opportunity. God has given us an opportunity to have resources. Not many people have resources. They were not that much, but at least we had resources. And then God has brought people like Sinapis, like Talanton. I don't know how many SMEs out there just dream of getting some kind of support. And we do not take that very lightly. We know that this could only be God. And if he has done this, then he's trusting us with so much. He's trusting us with so much. And we have to be very good stewards of what he's trusting us with. Because we don't want at the end of the day to be like the foolish, the wicked. Actually, I use the word wicked. The guy was given a talent and he just buried it because whatever his reasons were. But we want to be the one that multiplied. In the process, we are changing lives, we are growing, whatever God has given. We are being faithful stewards, so to speak, because growth is faithfulness. So that's one of the things we are looking at. We have to grow. We have to grow, and we have to carry as many people with us on this journey of growth as possible, because that's what stewardship is all about. So the other thing we are doing is we want the people that interact with us on all levels. The farmers, it's still a bit not so clear, but the employees, some of the people who buy our produce, the consumers and all that, to get an opportunity to actually interact with Christ. For the employees, it's a bit easy because now we're able to have someone that shares the word with them. We started with the boardroom because the directors are all Christian. So whenever we have a management meeting, we start with devotions and then we share the word and all that. That's a little bit easier. And then even the staff, when we hold staff meetings, we have a slot where we have someone preach the word to them at different levels, because we employ people from all over the place. So some of them are Muslim, some of them are different, but at least someone is there to share the word with them so they can at least hear the word of God. And then we just want, for example, the people that are customers to be able to relate with us from that point. That scripture where Jesus says that a light cannot be hidden, like you cannot hide it, light and hide it under the bed. We want our light to shine so brightly that when they do business with us, they'll always be like, there's something about these guys, And we believe that if we stick to the right way of doing things, then just the way we do business will be our witness. Like we'll be able to witness without necessarily, just saying the word. So we want to be that level of kingdom business at all levels, with the farmers, with the employees, with the customers. Everyone that interacts with us should be able to encounter Christ, because we believe we are that door, that door. Remember when Jacob had a dream and he saw heaven and all that stuff, and it's like heaven was starting from right where he was, So we believe that we are like the door between heaven and earth. So when people interact with us, they're getting a glimpse of heaven. They're like, wow, these guys, they're faithful, they're honest, they're reliable, they're dependable, they're, all the heaven qualities that people will get by just interacting and doing business with us. So that's where we want to go. We are growing and we are figuring out how to do it better, but we're getting there.